Now we will be solving the question answers from The Elevator by William Sleator. So without much delay, if you are new to my channel, quickly subscribe. And now we will be doing the first question. Before we do the first question, let us quickly have a look at the extract. It was an old building with an old elevator. From there to slammed shut with a loud clanging noise. Now the first part. Where does Martin feel nervous? Why? Now, like I tell you in all my videos, when you are answering the first part of any question, you have to mention the name of the short story and the name of the writer. And when any question has more than one part, you have to answer individual parts in separate paragraph. So, where does Martin feel nervous? Answer. The quoted lines have been taken from The Elevator by William Sleator. Martin felt nervous in the old elevator of his newly transferred old apartment. Now, whenever you are answering any question, you have to take references directly from the text. And whenever you are quoting words or phrases from the text, that has to come within double quotes. And when you are mentioning the name of the story, that is The Elevator, then that comes under single quotes. Now, why did Martin feel nervous in the elevator? Being claustrophobic, Martin felt uncomfortable in the very small elevator. Moreover, the elevator was unpleasant and Martin feared that it would fall. This made him nervous. Now the second part. Why was the elevator in his building unpleasant to use? So the answer is, the old elevator in Martin's building was unpleasant to use. Firstly, the walls were dirty and the lighting was poor. Secondly, the door banged as it shut with a deafening noise. Thirdly, the elevator shuddered each time it went from one floor to another. Fourthly, the elevator was quite compact, which seemed overfilled with only 2 or 3 people. Now the third part of the question. What was the other option besides the elevator? Was it better than the elevator? Give reasons. Answer. The stairs was the other option besides the elevator. And was it better than the elevator? No, it was no better than the elevator. The stairs were dark as the lights were not working, and the ventilation was poor as there were no windows. The darkness and closed atmosphere resulted in echoes on the cemented floor. Now the fourth part. How did the size of the elevator affect the narrator later in the story? So the answer is, The very small elevator affected claustrophobic Martin later in the story, as he was unable to leave the elevator in the presence of the fat lady. Unable to reach the buttons, he had to squeeze himself in the corner because there was no room. Now the last part of the first question. Explain how does this extract act as a foreshadow in the story? So the answer will be, this extract acts as a foreshadow in the story when Martin encounters the fat lady in the very small elevator with no room. Later, the nervousness of Martin is highlighted with the slamming of the door and shuddering of the uncomfortable elevator. The passage foretells Martin's fear. Now coming to the second question. Let us have a look at the extract. He wanted to know why Martin was out of breath. From there to inside it for hours by himself. So the first part of the question. Who is he referred to in the extract? What does he ask Martin and why? So because this is the first part of the question, again you have to mention the name of the short story and the author. So the answer begins, the quoted lines have been taken from The Elevator by William Sleator. He in the extract refers to Martin's father. And what does he ask Martin? Martin's father inquired why Martin took the stairs to reach the 17th floor instead of taking the elevator. And why did he ask so? Martin's insensitive father was displeased with Martin's decision on learning why Martin was out of breath. Therefore, he asked Martin the quoted question. Now the second part. State the 3 adjectives which he apparently used for Martin and why. For Martin's father, Martin was skinny, weak, and a coward. He felt this way because he was insensitive and affected by the stereotypical expectations of the society, where men are expected to be strong, muscular, and brave. He was unhappy with Martin's nervous and timid nature. Now the third part. What does Martin promise himself? Does he succeed? Name the other thing which he got used to. So the first part first. Martin promised himself that he would always take the elevator and get accustomed to it. Does he succeed? No. Martin's claustrophobia prevented him from getting habituated to the elevator. And name the other thing which he got used to. Martin got used to being bullied at school. Now the fourth part. What was his fear about the elevator? Did that happen in the end of the story? Give reasons. So the answer will be Martin feared that the exhausted elevator would collapse. He was always afraid that it would stop suddenly and he would be trapped inside it for hours. And did this happen in the end of the story? Yes. In the end, there was a fulfillment of Martin's fear. Give reasons. In this end of the story, we see that Martin was trapped inside the elevator with the fat lady who symbolized his fear. The piggy-eyed lady pressed the stop button and confined Martin. Now the last part of the question. Explain briefly the character traits of Martin based on this extract. When they say this extract, you have to give the characteristics of Martin that is coming out, that is being portrayed from the given passage only. You cannot give the characteristics of Martin from the entire story. So the answer to this question is, from Martin's father's opinion about Martin, we learn that Martin was skinny, weak, unathletic, and a coward. However, under societal pressure and his father's frowning, Martin tried to get used to his fears and seem courageous. His inability to socialize made him a bully at school. Now coming to the third question. So the extract is, he thought about her all day, but 7:30 in the morning was too early for visiting. So the first part, what did Martin think about her all day and why? So the answer to this question is, the quoted lines have been taken from The Elevator by William Sleator. Martin thought whether the fat lady was a resident in the old building where he lived, or a guest who had come to visit somebody in the apartment at 7:30 in the morning. And why did Martin think about her? Such thoughts arose in Martin's mind because he had never seen the lady before, and the apartment was not very big. However, the thought of a visitor dropping by at 7:30 a.m. seemed too early for Martin. Now coming to the second part of the question. Why was Martin nervous when he got back to his building from school? Answer: Martin was nervous when he got back to his building from school because he feared to encounter the fat lady in the elevator. He wanted to overcome the boring stare of those tiny piggy eyes. The presence of the lady made Martin uncomfortable, and his inability to socialize turned him into a cat on hot bricks. Now, coming to the third part. Why did Martin feel ashamed of himself? What does this reveal about him? Answer: the thought that he was afraid of an old lady made Martin feel ashamed of himself. And what does this reflect about him? This reveals that Martin was influenced by the societal expectations. He was conditioned by the society into believing that all people are weak and poor, and that courageous men should not be afraid of them. The fourth part. Why did Martin hope that the elevator would not stop? What happened when it did stop on the third floor? So the answer is, Martin was unwilling to face the fat lady again. He feared the old lady, and so he hoped that the elevator would not stop. And what happened when it stopped? When the elevator stopped on the third floor, the door opened and the fat lady with a piggish face and blue eyes stared at Martin. She wore the same green coat and stepped in the elevator to reach the top floor. Now the last part of the third question. What, according to you, Martin found scarier, the elevator or the old lady? Give reason. So the answer is, according to me, Martin found the old lady to be scarier than the elevator. This is because, despite being claustrophobic, Martin tried to get used to the elevator. Later, he felt secure in the elevator in the presence of his father. However, the old lady, who was a symbolic illusion of Martin's fears, humiliated Martin with smiles and laughter and prevented his escape, making the situation worse and scarier. Now the fourth question. The extract. Martin knew he was probably making a mistake. Honestly, now you're afraid of some poor old lady? So the first part. What was the mistake Martin thought he was probably making? And why did he think so? So the first part first. The quoted lines have been taken from The Elevator by William Sleator. Martin thought it was his mistake to tell his father about his encounter with the fat lady in the elevator. It could also suggest that Martin thought he was making a mistake in judging the old lady. And why did he think so? Martin knew his father was insensitive, inconsiderable, and heartless. He frowned at Martin for being timid and weak. Thus, Martin thought this way. Moreover, Martin was aware how much he disliked people in the elevator. The second part. Why did Martin feel that he had to tell somebody about the woman? Whom did he decide to tell and why? Martin felt that he had to tell somebody about the woman because he had to express his thoughts to someone. And whom did he decide to tell? He decided to tell his insensitive father. And why did he choose his father? Martin chose to tell his father about the woman because he had no friends in school and he lived alone with his father. The third part. What was the one thing that Martin found strange about the lady and why? So the answer is the ascending and descending of the lady on the elevator in varied floors seemed strange to Martin. Her wait at the third floor was like a nightmare for him. And why is it so? The presence of the old lady was unexpected. Martin felt it wasn't possible for her to know when he would return from school. However, she made her presence on the third floor, already staring. Instead of going to the 14th floor, she went up to the 18th floor. Additionally, her first encounter with Martin at 7:30 in the morning was an unusual time for visitors. Now the fourth part. Martin's father asked him what he was worried about now. What was he worried about earlier? And what did his father say about him? So what was Martin worried about earlier? Answer. Earlier, Martin was afraid of using the unpleasant elevator and the dark stairs of the old building. The poor lighting and echoes of the cement made Martin nervous. And what did his father tell him? Earlier, his father frowned at Martin and gave him an expression as if to say that Martin was skinny, weak, and a coward. However, when he learned that Martin was afraid of a poor old lady, he questioned Martin's masculinity. He thoughtlessly asked Martin when he would overcome his fears and act like a man. Now the last part of the fourth question. Give the character sketch of Martin's father based on the extract. So the answer is, based on the quoted extract, we may conclude Martin's father was an insensitive person. He lacked the love and compassion a father should have for his child. Instead of addressing his son's problems, he was absorbed in watching television. Influenced by social conditioning, Martin's father was irritated on learning that Martin was afraid of a poor old lady. His approach to Martin's emotions is both thoughtless and heartless. Now the fifth question. What is the extract? Martin started running down the stairs. From there till did she know what would happen? So the first part. Why did Martin start running down the stairs? How did he fall? So the answer is, the quoted lines have been taken from The Elevator by William Sleator. Martin started running down the stairs because the fat lady who Martin feared was waiting for him in the elevator with a smile. And how did he fall? The stairs of the old building was dark. There was no windows and the lights were not working. Therefore, panic-stricken Martin fell in the stairs as he rushed downstairs, followed by the echoes of his own footsteps. Now, the second part. What were Martin's father's feelings on the way to the hospital? How had he reacted earlier when Martin took the stairs to reach his house on the 17th floor? So the answer to this, on the way to the hospital, Martin's father was angry and disappointed with Martin. Earlier, when Martin took the stairs to reach his house on the 17th floor, Martin's father frowned at him. He gave an expression that seemed to humiliate Martin for being skinny, weak, unathletic, and a coward. Now the third part. Why would Martin not be able to use the stairs? How do you think Martin would have been affected by this condition? Answer. Falling down the stairs, Martin had broken his leg. He needed the support of crutches to walk, and therefore he would not be able to use the stairs. And how did this affect Martin? Martin's injury required complete rest, which distanced him from encountering the fat lady in the elevator. This condition, therefore, made Martin feel a sense of security. The thought of being sheltered in his home made him feel quite safe and protected. The fourth part. Why did Martin think that the fat lady had smiled and knew what was going to happen to him? Answer. Martin thought that the fat lady smiled because she had seen him withdraw from taking the elevator. He thought he mocked his inability to move in fear. Martin felt that the smile of the old lady was a result of her knowledge about the forthcoming events. He interpreted her smile as her ability to predict what was going to happen. Now the last part of the fifth question. Explain briefly what could have given rise to such thoughts in Martin about the fat lady. Answer. The insensitive behavior of Martin's father towards Martin and the bullying of the students at school had shattered Martin's self-esteem. Thus, when the fat lady smiled at Martin for being unable to move with fear, Martin immediately thought the lady was humiliating him. He felt the lady knew in advance that he would injure his leg because of her evil smile. Now the last question from this story. The extract is, but the door was already closing from there to the end of the story. "Hello, Martin," she said, and laughed and pushed the stop button. So the first part. How did Martin remain alone in the elevator? What did his father tell him? So the answer is, the quoted lines have been taken from The Elevator by William Sleator. After returning from the hospital, Martin used the old elevator to reach his home along with his father. While ascending, his father suddenly remembered that he had promised to meet Mrs. Ullman on the 9th floor. Thus, after Martin's father stepped out of the elevator, Martin was left alone. And what did his father tell him? Martin's father criticized Martin for feeling afraid to be in the elevator alone. Molded by the societal expectations, he heartlessly asked Martin to grow up. The second part. Why did Martin want to press the button 9 on the elevator? What happened instead? Answer. Left alone in the elevator, Martin wanted to press the button 9 on the elevator to reopen the door of the elevator. He wanted to accompany his father to Mrs. Ullman's home. But what happened instead? Instead of reopening the door, the elevator stopped at the 10th floor. The third part. Why could Martin not move out of the elevator? What happened thereafter? Answer. Martin failed to move out of the elevator because he had broken his leg and was dependent on crutches. The door of the elevator slammed before he could exit. And what happened thereafter? Thereafter, the elevator stopped at the 10th floor where the fat lady was waiting for him. She stepped on the elevator and Martin was too slow to get out of her way. After the door closed, the lady laughed and pushed the stop button. The fourth question. Now this is very important. Why do you think the lady laughed and then pushed the stop button? Give reason. Answer. According to me, the fat lady was an illusion who Martin imagined in his subconscious mind. The lady represented Martin's fears and prevented him from escaping. Martin's shattered self-esteem made him think that even his fears laughed at his weakness. The pushing of the stop button indicates the end to Martin's fear. He faced his fear so many times that he finally built the courage to face it. I consider the lady to be an illusion because she was only visible to Martin, and she always entered the elevator after Martin's arrival. Moreover, she had no specific floor to descend. Now, the last part of this question, the story ends in a cliffhanger. What is a cliffhanger? Explain what according to you would have happened at the end. Give reasons to justify your answer. So a cliffhanger is a dramatic ending that leaves the readers in suspense. According to me, the illusion of the fat lady would disappear after pressing the stop button. Martin had always feared that he would be trapped inside an elevator. Now that his ultimate fear has come to fulfillment, Martin has gained the strength to endure it. He would finally reach the 17th floor and no longer remain timid and nervous. So with this, we have completed all the important questions that can come from this short story, The Elevator by William Sleator. Now, if you are looking for the explanation of this short story, you can check out the description box where I have provided the link to the video where I have explained the entire short story line by line. I have also prepared a quiz whose link is given in the description. Moreover, I have a WhatsApp channel and a Telegram channel where I discuss grammar and share relevant notes. So if you want, you may join those channels too. So with this, I come to an end of this video unless and until I come with my next video. Happy studying English. Ta-da!